Well, we got 2 days till that eclipse, and it's a pretty cool look at the sun thanks to just a little pair of $5 glasses. And if you have solar glasses, it's very important to keep in mind that you should see nothing at all through them except the sun. You shouldn't be able to see scenes. You see how it's completely dark when you look through those elements there. So you may see an extremely bright light, but mostly just the sun, and that should be it. So that's one good way to make sure you've got a good pair there. So anyway, let's check out what's happening outside right now. Give me a second. Forgot to load up my outside camera, and here it comes. And that's, whoa, pretty cool contrail there. Wonder who laid that down. I do notice one thing that's pretty cool is the sunsets are starting to hit us during the broadcast now. So we're losing daylight, heading into fall here, and pretty soon when we take a look outside, it is going to be dark. Okay, let's head to the charts and see what's going on, and we can start out with the long wave picture, because this will kind of define what's going to be happening over the weekend and on Monday. Let me bring my tool up here. And let's see who we have in chat here. Andrew here. We have Jeff Lockwood positioned in Joplin, Tree Nelson in Wyoming, and I'll probably be joining you guys in Nebraska. Andrew says, how are you planning on documenting the eclipse? Hey, there I am. How are you planning on documenting the eclipse regarding equipment and composure? I'm just going to use the, maybe I can show that to you here. I've got a Canon Vixia. That's what I use for most of my shots outside. It's a pretty simple camera. It's listed at like $300, but I got it used for about $150. Got a pretty good deal there. And, you know, it does all that HD stuff. I'm going to do those glasses things like you just saw, but I want to get some of the landscape, because nobody's really done a good job capturing that, and show just kind of the impact of the shadow falling on the scene. David Moore, another muggy day in the Metroplex. Ron Chalfant joining us in Southern California. Andrew says Southern Illinois into Kentucky looks like a viable target at this point. We have Sue M here. And Kevin McKinney. Sue says, I'll try to watch Tim's live eclipse. Have no eye protection and concerned about pet reaction. I think your pets will be fine. I wouldn't worry about that. Burl H. Up there in northwest Missouri, heading up there. Hoping for a break in the clouds at 107. We have fun with tech. Kevin McKinney says a cartographer at Business Insider website produced maps showing the 12 locations most subject to gridlock. Yeah, that sounds interesting. I might see if we can pull that up here. Business Insider. I don't know if gridlock will come up with it. Let's see if I can, yeah. Okay, yeah, I've seen these maps before. If this is killing the stream, just bear with me. I'm going to stop the page load here. But yeah, there's some pretty good maps on there. And I remember one of those charts had identified the highway south of St. Louis. I think it was I-57 or 55. That was going to be pretty jammed there. So anyway, you can certainly check that out. Kevin McKinney saying the number one choke point is Santee, South Carolina. I guess that's on I-95 where it may be cloudy. We have Alexi Pinkson. Ryan Toomey's there in Asheville downtown. Appalachian taking it all in. Eddie W. and Sue M says, you don't know my high anxiety pedigree cats. All right. Well, let's do a very quick analysis, and then we'll head into that forecast. SPC showing we got some activity there in Nebraska. Got a severe thunderstorm watch. I don't always see anything in there on the radar composite, but this tells us that we've either got some good upslope or some good low-level jet action coming into the Central Plains, one of those two. Here's the 500 millibar analysis, the hemispheric. And we can see that trough there on the east coast starting to break up a little bit, and we get the ridging building in Alberta. And this is a pattern that we have. We're starting to see this troughing developing there on the west coast. That'll be kind of the pattern for this weekend. Pretty potent frontal system up here in the Northwest Territories. Got some good westerly winds through the Yukon there, so things getting active there in Canada, but that'll remain mostly north of us. One little Alberta clipper here. 250 millibar analysis looking like that. There's that. This whole thing is basically a big long wave trough. And then we have the individual waves right there. There's a ridge, and there's another trough. So we're going to be developing this trough here in California, and that will have an impact on viewing weather in the central U.S. Okay, there's our jet stream. We can see the most active, the strongest baroclinicity. That is in Quebec. So right up there. And there's the outline of the polar front jet. And we've got a little bit of a subtropical jet from Arizona to Dodge City and then back down to Little Rock. And a little vortex here in off the southwest part of Florida there. I don't know if that shows up. There it is. So a little interesting little upper level feature. Yeah, it looks like that kind of weakens down at 500 millibars right there. 700, not much going on. Big trough over the central U.S. That's keeping things kind of warm right now. And then down at 850, this is where we look for the moisture. And not much of a moisture supply at this time. So we're looking at, let me see, let me check if this is dew points. This is dew point depression, I believe. See that value right there? I seriously doubt the dew point is 25 degrees at Las Vegas, for example. Dew points of 23, no, that's dew point depression. Okay, so these values here indicate relative humidity, basically. It doesn't indicate dew point directly, but this value by itself is more of a reflection of relative humidity. And values of 5 or below are associated with clouds. So there's that southerly flow coming up, and most of the moisture looks to be concentrated kind of in this area right there. That's where we have the values below 10. And even offshore, all the way down there. Okay, so we are bringing up a little bit of moisture. Thickness chart indicating a little bit of a frontal system up in the northern plains. Probably located something like that right there. No doubt that has something to do with the thunderstorm action there in Nebraska. And indeed, it looks like we do have a few cells. I guess that would be west of Valentine, maybe. But one good cell right there. And you can see the effect of the southwesterly flow here. So, do you see this cirrus plume here? Okay. The western edge of that runs from about Phoenix to the Four Corners up to Colorado Springs. So let's go back to the 200 millibar chart. Do we have an updated version of that? No, we're still looking at 12Z. However, you can see that the jet earlier this morning located something like that, and you can kind of see that the clouds do tend to concentrate along and south of that jet axis. And that right there is a pattern that we are kind of concerned about with this eclipse coming up, because this trough here is going to be amplifying, and that is going to move some of the clouds into the Great Plains. Okay, let's see here. Let's check out what's happening in the tropics real quick. I'm sure Ryan is probably waiting for this part here. Got a couple waves, and I'm not really too sure which one. We had a Harvey down here yesterday, and here we can see a little tropical disturbance. This may cause problems for viewing along the Gulf Coast. It is going to be a partial eclipse down in this area. We're talking magnitudes of like 0.8 to 0.9. However, it's probably going to be clouded out in that area. What does NHC have? We're getting into an active season here, and looks like Tropical Storm Harvey is now a depression. 35 knots there, sustained, and a couple of other features here ripe for development. And over the next 5 days, we've got one taking aim on the Bahamas and Florida. So we may be looking at some action after the eclipse coming out to the Florida coast or the Carolinas. Okay, I think that completes most of the analysis. I'm going to take a quick look at the chart here. As you can see, I kind of like looking up Northwest Territories, Yukon. I've always been interested in that area, and I can see the cool down that we have there. And let's go back to the lower 48. We can see that southerly flow coming up from the Gulf all the way up northward. A couple 100-degree readings along the Rio Grande. And looks like our frontal system, there it is, coming out of Alberta into Montana. So our front is set up something like that. And then the warm front, well, this looks like the warm sector here in western Kansas. 92 degrees there at Garden City. 87, 95, very warm temperatures, 90. And then we cool down to 83 at Des Moines, 81, 76. So that's going to put the warm front probably something like that right there. So that right there is the triple point in northern South Dakota. And that'll probably be kind of proceeding southeastward. So we'll check that out on the GFS forecast. Okay, we'll head into the chat here. Let me give you all something to look at. I want to take a look at that storm there in Nebraska. So we're going to zoom way in on that using this GO16 imagery every 5 minutes. So I'm going to show you the full capability of this new next generation satellite. Okay, so I'll set you up with 10 frames. And here it comes, the Nebraska storm. Looking at the overshooting top, you can see the gravity waves on top of this thing. The main updraft located about right there. And typically what we see is sort of a V pattern around that updraft there. And then downstream from that, we have kind of a wake area where temperatures are a little bit warmer. So that's kind of the structure we usually see on these things. And right here, this is all the back shear on that storm. So I'm sure that's pretty spectacular if you're out in the sand hills looking east. Probably going to get yourself a beautiful photo looking at that. Well, why don't we bring up some radar? We'll take a quick look at that storm. I wonder if we have any chasers on this cell. GR level 2 coming up. And we are probably going to have to go all the way up to... let's see, Hastings. No, I guess we'll have to go to this site right here. Start the download. And we will check out that storm and see what that looks like on radar. Burl H saying that the tornado warning storm yesterday that we looked at produced an EF2 tornado. And we definitely saw that shear. If you missed the webcast, check out the previous videos and you'll see the tornadic storm that we looked at yesterday in northern Iowa. And looks like we have another supercell here. You can definitely see the rotating structure, very high reflectivities, probably some very large hail on that thing. Probably this time of year, you could get up to golf ball sized, very easy, even baseball. And the reflectivity looks, or the velocity looks like this. And we got to keep in mind where the radar is. So it's going to be off to the west-northwest. And zooming in on that thing, we've definitely got what looks like a TVS, tornado signature. We've got 59 knots inbound, about 50 out. So that's going to put a very likely tornado on the ground right where I have that marker. So that's just west of this town of Almeria. And there's what it looks like on the reflectivity. Looks like quite a beast there. Just amazing. Check out spectrum width and see what that shows. Yeah, spectrum width, I can kind of see a little bit of evidence of the boundaries underneath that updraft, something like that. So where you see this noisy data here on the spectrum width, often that corresponds to the inflow coming into these cells. So probably what we're looking at is something like that. And this is going over the top of this forward flank downdraft and wrapping into that tornado right there. And then here we have the RFD. So that's the RFD. This is the forward flank downdraft. So there's an analysis of your storm there. Strong rear flank downdraft right there. Big freight train of hail coming in behind that, and forward flank downdraft right there. So quite a storm. And looks like that's heading south very slowly. Very strong right mover. And quite a lot of outflow boundaries in here. So if you're forecasting overnight, you're going to keep an eye on these boundaries and use all your tools to keep track of them, because usually the next day those tend to be a focus for convection and other weather. Okay, let me check out the chat here. Beatrice, Nebraska. I guess Chris Overby is in Beatrice, Nebraska, waiting for totality. Ryan says the Atlantic tropics took a steep drop with a decline in storm development. So I guess we got a bit of a break here. Alexei reminding, please don't forget to hit the like button. And I do appreciate that. If you hit the like button, that will make the channel start coming up a little more regularly in search listings. We have Mike Estwick here. Ryan Toomeys, thank goodness for the timing of dry air aloft with the upper level lows moving forward ahead of the tropical storm and waves. Talking about the tropics there, storms falling apart and thankfully moving further west. Yeah, we could have had quite a monster there in the Caribbean. Mike Estwick says it's been hot in Denver, 90 degrees. Storms off to the east. A few clouds over Denver from Chris there. Cattle killer hailstones from Ryan there. Yeah, what I'm showing you, this is live data. So this is a storm in Nebraska. And yesterday we were looking at a cell up here in Iowa, up in this area here. Okay, let's head into the forecast and see what we have coming up over the next few days. Well, for our mesoscale analysis, mesoscale forecast, looks like a little bit of convection in the Wichita Falls area dying off. So that'll be mostly gone by dawn. And then looking at the central U.S., we have that cell up in Nebraska, some activity out in the high plains, and we will form up an MCS. Okay, so that's important because that will lay down a boundary overnight, kind of in this area like that. So you're going to be looking for something right in that area, and that could have an effect later tomorrow where we have convection set up the next day. Okay, so almost makes it to Kansas City overnight, but yeah, looks like it makes it there about 3, 4 in the morning. Okay, let's head into the forecast here. 200 millibar analysis. This is kind of like the key to the weather. This is a reflection mostly of density in the lower atmosphere and, of course, the moisture and velocity fields aloft. And here's that trough. You can see it amplifying there. And then eclipse time is about right here. So subtropical jet coming up from Arizona about like this here. So that's important because remember, along these subtropical jets, along and just south of that, we can get a lot of cirrus, scattered and broken cirrus. And it looks like the model has actually amplified that a little bit more than what we had yesterday. So unfortunately, that's going to bring more of the clouds up into the central U.S. That'll be a problem there. Tropical storm, or the tropical disturbance off the Gulf Coast, that it looks like it stays to the south. Pretty quiet aloft over the southeast U.S. And then the Pacific Northwest under northerly flow, so that's good for clear skies there. Southwesterly flow is really what can be a problem in the Pacific area. Okay, then for the rest of the week, we open up that trough that ejects northeastward and moves through the Central Plains. Probably some MCSs there through the week. And then we get the ridge building back over Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, which is what we don't need with all that wildfire there. So temperatures are going to warm up, and we're going to have some dry weather. And looks like that breaks down and they get a little bit of relief there towards the 29th. And then we've got September coming up, and September, there it is, showing up at the top of the screen. So we're getting to the end of summer finally. And wow, look at that towards the very end. That looks like almost like a wintertime pattern. Let me take a look at a couple of frames from that at the very end. I'm going to switch over to the continental. Holy crap, yeah, look at that. I mean, this is 384 hours out, so this is kind of crystal ball stuff here, but got quite a ridge over Alaska, and this is like the Polar Express. That is going to definitely carry some cold air southward if that actually pans out. Let me see what it's going for as far as temperatures. 2 millibar AGL temperature. And what we're seeing here towards the end is looks like lots of 30s and 40s in the Canadian prairies. We've even got 30s and 40s, and this is during the early afternoon in Montana there. So you see how strong that is. And then in the Dakotas, we're looking at 50s and lower 60s. So we'll cross our fingers that that pattern holds together, because that'll really give us something to look at there. Okay, for our eclipse, let's check out the weather. I'm going to start with the GFS here. And I'm going to lock this on the forecast time for the eclipse. Okay, there it is, 21st at 18Z. This is going to be the pattern we're going to be dealing with. We're going to look at the GFS first and compare that to the NAM. So we've got low pressure there in Nebraska. Probably got some sort of warm front through Iowa. Cold front around the backside there. So we're going to be seeing upslope in South Dakota. That'll keep things kind of cloudy in that area right there, possibly reaching down into the Alliance area and Scottsbluff. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Looks pretty good through the western U.S., but we're going to have to look at the upper level humidity, because there could be some cirrus. And then for the southeastern U.S., we've got high pressure, part of the Bermuda High off the east coast. So southeasterly flow. Should be partly to mostly cloudy over most of this area, but we don't see anything that looks like weather problems. In fact, look at this. We've got a ridge. See, we're seeing this ridging along the totality area. So that's one good thing in our favor that will help suppress some of the convective development there. Okay, let's compare that with the NAM. Similar picture. The low looks like it's a little further south there in North Kansas. And they're going for a little bit of shower activity west of St. Joseph in northern Kansas right there, and in far northern Missouri there. So that warm front there, that may be a bit of a problem. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Very little precip through the southeast U.S. Things look good along the track there, and also pretty good out in the western U.S. Now, one thing I'm going to show you here is the upper level moisture. First, we'll look at the 200 millibar chart. This is up at 40,000 feet. And the green here is high relative humidity. So values over 70 to 80%, those are going to be associated with clouds. So we're talking about the medium to darker green. So we may see some of that in Washington and northern Idaho. Just a little bit, maybe. And looks like some over the central U.S. That you can see the cellular appearance, so that's probably debris from the high plains, the north New Mexico area, Four Corners. 300 millibars at 30,000 feet. Okay, there we go. So you can see that one problem is that it has bulked up the high-level clouds in Nebraska. So you see that cloud cover there. That's kind of new. And that's very difficult to forecast. And let me show you where that came from. Because to understand what that cloud layer is doing there, we need to find out what is causing that. Okay, so there's the frame during the eclipse. The shadow is right here. Waiting for the charts to load here. Okay. So we'll follow this patch back. Okay, you can see it's, if we run that back, you can see that's come from New Mexico. So the source of that there, you can see, is thunderstorms in the mountains of New Mexico. And then that's being picked up by the subtropical jet and advected northward. So I don't think there's any dynamic lift enlarging that field, but we're just kind of playing along with the models to kind of figure out where that's going. And that leads us to another point about forecasting. If you go to some of the websites, let me see if I can get to that. Okay, this is Reddit. I don't know how many of you are on Reddit, but you can see that there's a lot of people asking about the weather here. And I wanted to show you kind of a common problem in here. Yeah, looking for a cloud-free zone. People are sharing a lot of links that go to numerical models. So, yeah, I'm trying to find the threads here. Yeah, this is it. See, we've got links here to wxmaps.org, for example, and people are using this to kind of figure out where the clouds are. And some people are going directly off of the statistical, like day-by-day forecast. They're getting it from that. So there's a lot of problems with that because you don't really know where that data is coming from in many cases. It's heavily reprocessed. And see, the thing is, let me bring you over to this graphics program here. Yeah, this is a little bit of weather school here. This kind of shows you a look at forecast skill, forward with time from left to right. So when we're looking at the near term, for example, 10 a.m. on Saturday, 10 a.m. during the eclipse. The eclipse is coming up in 2 hours. Okay, so what are you going to use for weather? Well, a lot of people are probably going to go to those sites, and you can kind of see numerical models. They do not really do very well in the short term. What really works, you can see up here, is extrapolation, which means going to the actual observed data, like the, let me show you a good source to go to. You might want to bookmark this for your devices. Weather.us. He's got the GO 16 sectors on there. So that would be under satellite images. And basically, you just kind of like zoom right down to your sector. What I'll do a lot of times is go to the custom zoom, because that gives you a little more flexibility. So then you click on that, and the results that you get, those are bookmarkable. They're not dynamic links, which means you can save them in your browser and pull them up later without having to go through this whole procedure over and over again. But you can see as you zoom in, here we're looking at infrared data, so we're not going to do that on Eclipse Day. We're going to be looking at this product here that says during the day. So that's going to be visible imagery. So we're going to use maybe the color Super HD. And it's probably dark there right now. Let's see here. I'll just zoom in on Montana for now. There we go. So here we're looking at some clouds there in the Billings-Bozeman area. This is what you're going to use about 2 to 3 hours before the eclipse. You're going to want to use that satellite data to nowcast the weather. Okay, Super HD, that seems to work. Yeah, the Super HD link. So we're going to use this to kind of find a gap there. Okay. So going back to this, basically what I'm trying to tell you, pattern and experience. If you're an experienced forecaster, you're going to have some pretty high skills. And if you combine that with model data, your skill is going to look like that right there, the orange line. So you can see that right here. This is all the nowcasting. Let me check my tools here. Yeah, that area right there in blue, that's nowcasting. So you can see when you're nowcasting, you're basically relying heavily on observed data, and you're not depending very much on models. They can help you a little bit, but a lot of the mesoscale processes, you have to really dig into the data to kind of see what's going on. And on Eclipse Day, most of what you're going to be concerned with is basically extrapolation. That's easy to do. You just kind of watch the cloud patterns and then find out where they're going to go. But at a certain point, the numerical models start doing better than the forecaster using just pattern and experience. So that range is probably, for experienced forecasters, probably about 12 to 24 hours maybe 12 hours or so. So that's what we're doing with right now. Monday, the weather is way out here. Okay, so the best source of data is going to be the numerical models. And that's what a lot of people are using to kind of forecast the weather. But diagnosis and prognosis, which is kind of what we're doing on this webcast, that will give you one step ahead, because you'll know why things are there and if something might be looking off. Okay, this right here, this is something pretty interesting. Say that, for example, this was the forecast here, and we were looking for maybe eclipse in northeastern New Mexico right there. So the GFS is showing that that's covered by cirrus. We're looking about a day and a half ahead. And we go over to the NAM and we look at that and we can see, well, there's some blue areas in the area. So we're not going to be too sure whether we're going to have cirrus overcast. Well, what actually happened was this. And you can see northeast New Mexico looking pretty good. that area of GFS cirrus coverage was probably this weak cirrus stuff like that. So what I'm showing you here is the track record, the verification of the models. And we can see that the GFS probably overdoes the cloud cover a little bit. Okay, then another thing that we can look at to check out the weather along the eclipse track is the change in the models from 12Z to 18Z. Okay, for example, this is the GFS forecast. This is a cloud cover at the time of the eclipse. Now, the blue echoes what you see here, the blue colors, that's the cloud cover from the 12Z run. So that red right there, that's cloud cover from the 12Z run. Cloud cover from the 18Z run is green. So like up here, you see this green right here, that's cloud cover. And where they're existing as pure red or pure blue and pure green, those are areas that have changed. So you can see right here, if you see blue, that means the model removed it going from 12Z to 18Z. If it's green, it added it in. So what this shows here is in Nebraska, lots of green in the central part of the state. So the model has actually added more cloud cover in that area, which is kind of a negative thing. Both models going for overcast from Dodge City up to Iowa, as you can see here. And then green through here indicates it has added some cloud cover in Missouri. But it has removed cloud cover in the Nashville area, in Paducah. So that's worth considering there. And both of them are going for really no cloud cover around Asheville. So I'm sure Ryan is happy about that. And there is definitely agreement that we are going to have problems in eastern South Carolina. So this is a great way of comparing the model data. So most of this cloud cover that you see right here, that's the stuff that is along and to the right of the subtropical jet. And we know that this mostly is cirrus. So obviously that's probably not going to be too much of a problem. Let me go back to the models here. Okay, 21st at 18Z. I'm going to bring you up a SKU-T for Nebraska, right around Grand Island. Okay, so you can use these SKU-Ts to kind of see what's going on. So what do we have on the SKU-T? Well, looks like no lower mid-cloud cover. The cloud cover we have is aloft up at about 28,000 feet, intersecting the 300 millibar level. So this is that cirrus coming from that convection in New Mexico and Old Mexico. And the problem that we have with that excuse me, I'm going to have to go to this product here to show you what I mean. Nope. Here we go. Okay, you see all that cloud cover that we have. This is what is going to be impacting the eclipse in the central U.S. So how do we know that this cloud field has been sampled properly by the model? What about all this new convection? How well is that sampled, for example? So there is still uncertainty in these forecasts. We've got to keep that in mind. Now we have the NAM is a little bit better model. The NAM is basically the WRF. It's a mesoscale model. And what we see here is the same thing. Blue is where it's removed cloud from 12Z to 18Z. Green is where it's added. And we can see that there is a lot of green in Nebraska. So, yeah, that looks a little bit problematic. However, there's a chance that it's going to be kind of a thin overcast. So I can't be completely sure like how thick or thin it is, but I'm guessing that it's going to be kind of patchy in nature. And we've seen that the models have kind of overdone the cloud cover a little bit. See this right here? If it added stuff way back here and removed stuff here, that means it slowed down this system right here. So there may be a little bit of cloud cover in eastern Idaho, northwestern Wyoming there. And then we've added a little bit of cloud cover on the NAM in the Nashville area, Paducah. And then once we get down into the Carolinas, that's where we have problems. Both of the models are agreeing on issues down there. But it looks like Asheville, a little bit of a clear area. And that's because we've had a little bit of dry air advection in the low levels. Okay, there it is, 21st at 18Z. And you can see the intrusion of dry air. This is dew points at the surface. The blue is dew points in the 60s. So that's going to help out a lot. So we're going to have lower relative humidities, and that's going to limit the amount of low cloud cover that we see in that part of the southeast U.S. Okay, hopefully I haven't lost too many people. I know that's kind of a very sophisticated look at what's happening, but let me just summarize that real quick. Because of that graph that I showed you, what did I do with that? Okay, I'll just have to bring that up again. Yeah, I've lost one of my maps on here. There it is. Okay. What I was trying to show you is that the forecast at the eclipse time is out here. So the best we can do is rely on the numerical models like I've been showing you here. So like that right there. Tomorrow night we're going to be at more at this point here, which means we can use experience and a little bit of forecaster expertise to kind of see what's going on. And then on the morning of the eclipse, we're going to be falling into this range, which means the models are only going to have very limited accuracy. So you're going to want to use them in the morning to see what things are going to look like at 18Z. But as the morning progresses, you need to start shifting over to the observed data. So there's a final look at the NAM cloud cover for the eclipse. So we're looking for more problems there in Nebraska to summarize. For Missouri, looks like both model, well, let me see here. Hang on a second. Yeah, the GFS a little more pessimistic for clouds there. It added a little bit of cloud cover there in Missouri, but the mesoscale NAM there going for a little bit of clearing there in the Ozarks. So if I had a hotel there, I would probably stay put. Maybe look at things tomorrow night. Tennessee looking okay. You can see the patchy clouds there. I think we're just going to be seeing scattered to broken cumulus during the day, not much precip, so I think things are going to be okay in that area. The main problems are going to be in South Carolina. Wyoming looking good, just a little bit of a cloud band moving through. Idaho looking good, also Oregon. And the final thing is smoke. I'll show you a pretty neat product to look at. If you go to the rapidrefresh.noaa.gov site, they've got a smoke product right here. I don't know if that's showing up. Yeah, HRR smoke. So you can look at that, and what we're going to look at here is a vertically integrated smoke. Let me see if I can get all that to show up. Yeah, there we go. So there's our smoke forecast, and this is a pretty neat model here because you can see they've got the wildfires in Idaho, in Oregon, and the big one in far southwestern Oregon. They've got that all modeled. So at the eclipse time, it's going to be the 21st at 18Z. I don't think we're quite there yet. Yeah, this only runs through about midnight on the night before the eclipse. So a lot of that western British Columbia wildfire, that's going to be moving eastward. Out into the Great Lakes, it should be kind of out of the picture. You can see that along the path right here. Things are actually looking pretty good. I don't think we're going to have any restrictions. You can see things looking kind of clear there in Idaho and Oregon. Problems with smoke will be localized. California, of course, they will have smoke problems there, but that's a little bit out of the totality path there. So check this out tomorrow for your location, and that'll give you an idea how the visibility will be looking at. And otherwise, high-resolution rapid refresh, this is what you're going to use on the morning of the eclipse. I would go to HRR hourly, and you can see they've got all these fields. You can set the domain to your area where you are. And then they've got these products down here. If you scroll down, ceiling, that's a big one that I'm going to be looking at because that tells me whether we're dealing with mid-clouds, high clouds, low clouds. And then there are a couple of cloud cover, yeah, total cloud cover right there. So, and then we have the constituent low, mid, and high cloud cover. So for Nebraska, for example, I'm going to be looking at the high cloud cover a lot for that one. So that's an example of what that looks like. And there's the ceiling product, for example. So anyway, that's some good products to look at. And, of course, pivotalweather.com. They've got some pretty good graphics there. Okay, so let me take a look at chat here, and I guess we'll wrap up. I've got to drive to Dallas here in the next hour or two. I'm planning to head up to Nebraska unless things start looking downhill for Nebraska. So we just don't really know too much at this point. Okay, Radar Scope has a nice view of the storm near Brewster from Ron Chalfant. Michael Burrell preparing for the traffic issues with the eclipse coming up in South Carolina. 2 tornado warnings east of Brewster from Ron Chalfant. Anything below 80s in Texas is sweater weather, true. The heat needs to drop off. Yeah, we were 97 here today. Perfect weather in North Carolina where Ryan Toomey's is here. He's in Asheville there. Where would be a good place to go to for no clouds? Western or eastern Oregon for sure. 102 at DeWitt County from Sagan's Run. And Sagan's Run wondering what that fire is in South Texas. Good question. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for me. For tomorrow night, I may try to go ahead and start the stream at the usual time, 8 o'clock. I'm probably going to be on the road. I think what I'll do is I'll stop and look at some products and give you kind of like a mobile 8 p.m. forecast. And then on the day of the eclipse, if I'm up there, I will try to stream that around maybe 12:45 and let you all check out some of the action up there if the network is holding up. Okay, so let me get my desktop here. I appreciate you watching the webcast, and hopefully good luck with the eclipse, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night somewhere up in the SFO Plains. Have a good evening.